This photo of a solitary duck is one of my favorite photos that I've ever taken. I was living in New York City more than 10 years ago, and I used to love going to Central Park. The most surprising thing about the photo is that I took it on a pretty cheap point-and-shoot camera, and the results surprised me when I first saw it. I liked the muted colors, and I liked the distorted reflections of the skyscrapers and branches on the surface of the pond. Though it wasn't my intention at the time, looking back on the photo many years later, I'm reminded of Caspar David Friedrich's painting, Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog. This painting has been one of my favorite works over the years, and I was inspired to paint with it in mind. In today's video, I'll be showing part of my process of painting from my photo reference. Unfortunately, I did lose part of my footage. I still have a pretty bad habit of not properly backing up my phone, so I'm sorry about that in advance. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the video. I started with a loose pencil sketch. At this stage of the process, I always have to remind myself not to get overly attached to detail. I'm just simply trying to establish the correct proportions and also basic composition of the scene. Next, I'm applying some clean water to slightly dampen the paper. This will let me apply the first few washes with soft edges. Now I'm dabbing in some yellow ochre. Preserving the whites of the page around these areas is going to be key for capturing luminosity in the scene and for conveying a sense of reflected light off the surface of the pond and nearby rocks. I switched over to my silver black velvet brush for the underpainting process. Here I'm using a mix of Payne's Gray with some ultramarine and alizarin crimson mixed in. I started off by laying in some cool tones to develop the form of the duck. Unfortunately, I was so focused on the underpainting process that I didn't realize that my phone had run out of storage. Once I finally realized I wasn't recording anymore, I quickly backed up enough storage space to film the rest of the painting. Here I'm resuming with my second wash. This is where I'm focusing on building the layers of colors for an impressionistic rendering of the surface of the pond. For these larger washes, I'm using my Escoda Último mop brush. This is a synthetic brush and it holds a lot of water, and I have to say, during editing, it's always a lot of fun to speed up the footage and watch the colors blend into each other on the paper. The textures on the rocks were particularly fun to paint. To create the impression of crevices, I was using darker values and also sharper lines, and to convey more superficial changes of planes, I used lighter values and alternated between warm and cooler tones, softly blending between the edges. For the fine details on the duck, I alternated between my Princeton Velvet Touch round brush, size 1, and my generic calligraphy style brush from Blick Art Store. In particular, I wanted to capture the iridescent quality of the feathers. I achieved that mainly through subtle shifts in hue. So for areas cast in shadow, I used accents of cooler tones like ultramarine and blended them softly into areas of warmer hues. For me personally, one of the things that makes the original photo reference so captivating is the small intricate details of the reflected tree branches and skyscrapers on the surface of the pond. So when it came time to define these details, I wanted to be extra thoughtful about the brushwork and techniques I was using. You'll notice here that I was switching between several different brushes. One of the brushes was a generic Chinese calligraphy style brush from Blick Art Store, and I was using that to put down some of the darker green values for the trees. I was also using my Grumbacher Goldenedge liner brush, size 2. So this one is a synthetic brush that I had learned about through another YouTube channel, The Mind of Watercolor. If you haven't seen that channel before, I highly recommend it. It's been a really great resource for learning new tips and tricks for watercolor. And recently, the Grumbacher Goldenedge has been one of my favorite rigger style brushes for fine details. Finally, the third brush that I was using was my silver black velvet brush. So for those of you who paint with watercolor, you'll probably be familiar with the silver black velvet line. These are really great synthetic squirrel brushes. They hold a lot of water, and this was a nice brush to do some of the similar work that I was using the Chinese calligraphy style brush for. This is the final painting. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with it, but as I mentioned earlier, I do regret losing a lot of my footage, so I'll be painting it again and sharing soon. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. I'm still developing the channel, and all of your views and subscriptions will be greatly appreciated. Most of the content on this channel will be focused on drawing, painting, and travel vlogging, but I'm excited to see what will come of it with your support. Thanks so much again for watching, and I hope you stick around for more adventures.